Before we dive in today, we want to welcome you and pray that God richly blesses your day and your entire week ahead.
Absolutely.
So imagine standing in a courtroom where the prosecutors completely change their charges halfway through the trial.
Just a total pivot.
Exactly. And the judge repeatedly declares the defendant absolutely innocent, but the crowd, they violently demand that a known murderer walk free instead.
It's an utter inversion of justice.
It really is. And that inversion is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're jumping into a deep dive on Luke chapter 23, exploring the trial, the crucifixion, and the burial of Jesus.
Right.
But we are looking past just the surface narrative to understand the underlying political chess matches, some fascinating linguistic secrets, and the ancient prophetic blueprints that completely reframe this historical event for you.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how often we read ancient texts purely as theological statements, right?
For sure.
We completely miss the gritty, cynical, geopolitical reality happening in the background. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, we aren't just looking at a tragic execution.
No, not at all.
We're analyzing a profound collision.
Right.
On one side, you have the ultimate ruthless pragmatism of Roman governors and local power brokers trying to suppress a riot.
Right.
And on the other side, you have a meticulously orchestrated fulfillment of centuries-old prophecies. It changes everything about how you understand the mechanics of the story.
Okay, well, let's unpack this political machinery then, because the chapter starts with Jesus being dragged before Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea.
Right.
And the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin, they pull off a maneuver that I can really only describe as blatant legal venue shopping.
That is exactly what it is.
Because in their own religious midnight trial, they condemn Jesus for blasphemy. But the moment they step into Pilate's Roman court, they completely abandon the religious argument.
They drop it entirely.
Yeah, they abruptly pivot to a purely secular federal defense strategy.
Well, they had to, because of a concept in Roman law called aesius gladii, which means the right of the sword.
Okay.
In first-century Judea, the Roman Empire stripped local religious courts of the authority to execute anyone.
Wow, okay.
So if the Sanhedrin walked in and told Pilate, hey, this man committed blasphemy against our temple laws, Pilate would have thrown the case out immediately.
He wouldn't have cared at all.
Not even a little. Rome didn't care about Jewish theological disputes. They cared about one thing, well, two things really, maintaining order and extracting taxes.
Which explains the highly specific, entirely fabricated charges they invent on the spot.
Exactly.
I mean, they look Pilate in the eye and claim three things. They say Jesus is subverting the nation, he forbids paying taxes to Caesar, and he claims to be Christ, a king.
Basically framing him as a dangerous insurrectionist.
Right, someone threatening the economic and political stability of the Roman Empire. And I know from our earlier deep dives into Luke that the tax charge is an outright lie.
Well, completely.
Because Jesus had explicitly told people just a few days prior to render to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yeah, but Pilate, he's a hardened, seasoned political operator.
Right, he sees right through it.
He interrogates Jesus and immediately spots the local political maneuvering. He knows this isn't a rebellion. It's just a religious turf war that the Sanhedrin is trying to weaponize Rome to solve.
Wow.
So Pilate steps out and gives his verdict. He says, I find no guilt in this man.
But he's in a really precarious position.
Very. It's Passover.
Yeah.
Jerusalem's population has swollen massively with pilgrims. Nationalist fervor is at an absolute boiling point, and the religious leaders are basically threatened to incite a riot if Pilate doesn't cave.
So Pilate goes looking for a bureaucratic loophole.
And he finds one.
He discovers Jesus is from Galilee, which makes him the jurisdictional problem of Herod Antipas.
Who conveniently happens to be in Jerusalem for the festival.
Right. So Pilate essentially passes the buck. But the encounter with Herod is bizarre, isn't it? I mean, Herod doesn't want to find the truth. He just wants a magic trick.
Yeah, he treats it like a show.
He's heard the rumors and wants Jesus to perform a miracle on command.
And this brings us to one of those incredible prophetic blueprints. Herod interrogates him relentlessly, bombarding him with questions. But Jesus gives him absolutely nothing.
Complete silence.
Complete silence. And this isn't just defiance. When you look at the ancient texts, this behavior meticulously maps to the prophecy of Isaiah 53.
Written centuries earlier.
Exactly. It described a suffering servant who, quote, like a sheep that before his shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. Jesus is intentionally embodying that ancient framework.
Which, of course, infuriates Herod. I mean, he feels insulted. So he and his soldiers resort to treating Jesus like a theatrical joke.
Yeah, just brutal mockery.
They dress him in a gorgeous royal robe, sarcastically mocking this accusation that he's a king, and they ship him right back to Pilate.
Right.
And there's this chilling little footnote in the text. It says that on that exact day, Pilate and Herod, who had previously been bitter enemies, became friends.
Yeah, it's wild.
I've always wondered about the psychology there. Why does this specific event unite them?
Well, it's the dark camaraderie of shared power.
Oh, that makes sense.
Before this, they were likely locked in constant jurisdictional turf wars over who truly controlled the region. But by Pilate acknowledging Herod's authority to judge a Galilean, and Herod returning the prisoner to Pilate's ultimate jurisdiction, they basically validated each other's political legitimacy.
Wow, they bonded over their shared dismissal of a mutual nuisance.
Exactly. It's a cynical political alliance built on the mockery of an innocent man.
That is so dark. And that sets the stage for the ultimate inversion of justice when Jesus is back in Pilate's court.
Right.
Pilate tries 3 separate times to release him. He basically pleads with the crowd, offering to have Jesus flogged and let go. But the mob, completely whipped into a frenzy by the leaders, screams for the release of someone else, Barabbas.
And this is where the narrative irony reaches its absolute peak. Think about the charges they brought against Jesus.
Right.
They told Pilate he was a dangerous revolutionary inciting rebellion. That was a total fabrication. But who was Barabbas?
An actual revolutionary.
Yes. Historically, Barabbas was sitting in a Roman dungeon for committing actual sedition, leading a violent, bloody insurrection in the city, and for murder.
So the crowd demands the horrific execution of the innocent man falsely accused of terrorism, while simultaneously demanding a full pardon for the guilty man who literally committed the exact crime Jesus was framed for.
It's breathtaking hypocrisy.
It really is. And Pilate terrifyingly just washes his hands of it and caves to the mob just to save his own political skin.
Which is just devastating.
Yeah. And this total collapse of justice bleeds right into the physical march toward the execution site, Golgotha.
Which translates to the place of a skull.
Right. And that march is brutal.
Well, yeah, because the physical toll of the Roman scourging would have already brought a victim near death before they even started walking.
Exactly. And on this march, there is a really heavily cryptic interaction. A crowd of women is following and mourning, and Jesus turns to them with this chilling warning.
Yeah, it's a very intense moment.
He tells them to weep for themselves and their children, warning of days so terrible people will beg the mountains to fall on them.
Right.
And he ends with this phrase. He says, "For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
Now, I used to think the green and dry wood was just a quaint proverb about nature.
Most people do.
But looking at the historical context, this is actually a terrifying geopolitical warning about Rome, isn't it? It is a profound, horrifying prediction of the year 70 AD.
Wow.
The green wood represents the current moment, like a time of relative peace in Judea, and specifically the presence of an innocent, life-giving man.
Okay, so what's the dry wood?
Well, the logic Jesus is presenting is this. If the Roman military machine is willing to brutally execute a completely innocent man during a time of peace, what unimaginable wrath will Rome unleash on a guilty, actively rebellious nation during a time of total war?
Oh, wow.
The dry wood is the future of Jerusalem.
And he was entirely right. About 40 years later, the Jewish rebellion triggered a Roman siege that ended in the catastrophic slaughter of Jerusalem and the complete leveling of the temple.
Exactly.
He's essentially saying, the injustice happening to me today is nothing compared to the judgment coming to this city.
It adds this massive layer of dread to the scene.
It really does. And then they finally reach the skull and crucify him. But he's not alone. He's crucified between 2 criminals.
Which, again, perfectly aligns with the ancient blueprint we mentioned earlier, fulfilling the prophecy of being numbered with the transgressors. And the psychological torture matches the physical. As he hangs there saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing," the Roman soldiers are sitting at the foot of the cross, throwing dice to divide up his clothing.
Which is right out of Psalm 22.
Yes, exactly.
1,000-year-old song describing enemies casting lots for garments. And the mockery comes from all sides, the rulers, the soldiers, the crowd, and even one of the dying criminals beside him.
Right.
But the dynamic completely flips with the other criminal.
And this raises an incredibly important point about who truly sees clearly in this narrative.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Every pillar of society, the state, the religious institution, the military, the public, they have universally rejected Jesus.
Yeah, true.
The only person in the entire scene who defends his innocence is a convicted, dying criminal.
Wow, that's profound.
This thief rebukes the other man, openly admits his own guilt, declares Jesus has done nothing wrong, and makes one simple plea: Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
And Jesus' response is astonishing. He says, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."
Yes.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I always thought paradise was just a generic synonym for heaven.
A lot of people assume that.
But the linguistic history of that specific word changes the entire weight of that promise.
Yeah.
Where does the word paradisos actually come from?
Oh, it's a gorgeous linguistic journey. The word paradisos is actually a Persian loanword.
Okay.
In ancient Persian culture, it didn't mean a spiritual realm at all. It referred to a massive, walled royal garden,
Oh, interesting.
like a lush, protected sanctuary belonging exclusively to the king. But the real theological weight comes from how ancient Greek translators used that exact Persian word centuries earlier when translating the Old Testament.
What did they use it for?
They used paradisos specifically to name the Garden of Eden.
Oh, wow. So he isn't just saying, you'll go somewhere nice after you die.
Not at all.
By invoking the word used for Eden, Jesus is promising a total cosmic restoration. Like the unbroken face-to-face communion with God that humanity lost in the first garden is being restored right here on the cross.
Exactly.
And this guilty criminal is the first one invited back inside the walls. Today, you will be with me.
It's a deeply intimate, personal promise of immediate fellowship.
It's beautiful.
It is. But the narrative doesn't let us linger in that quiet intimacy for long. The focus violently shifts outward to the cosmic scale, because from noon to 3 p.m., complete darkness covers the entire land.
And skeptics usually jump to a natural explanation here, like a well-timed solar eclipse.
Oh, constantly.
But since the crucifixion happened during Passover, and Passover historically always falls during a full moon, the astronomy just completely falls apart, right?
The astronomy makes an eclipse physically impossible.
Why is that?
Well, for a solar eclipse to occur, the moon must be positioned perfectly between the Earth and the sun, which only happens during a new moon phase. You literally cannot have a solar eclipse during a full moon. Furthermore, the longest total solar eclipse lasts mere minutes. This darkness suffocated the land for 3 straight hours.
Okay, so if it's not a natural astronomical event, what is the mechanism behind it?
Historically and theologically, this is understood as an eschatological sign,
Meaning what?
meaning an event associated with divine judgment and the end of an age. The prophet Amos, in chapter 8, explicitly warned of a day when God would make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight as a profound sign of mourning and judgment.
Wow.
It is basically the physical universe grieving the death of its creator.
And right in the middle of that supernatural darkness, a massive architectural event happens. The veil of the temple is torn down the middle.
Yes.
For a modern listener, it's hard to grasp how shocking this would be. It's like the ultimate VIP backstage pass being permanently digitized and made open source for the entire public.
That's a great way to put it.
Because this wasn't some flimsy decorative curtain, was it?
It's not at all. Historical sources describe the veil as a massive, incredibly heavy, intricately woven barrier that cordoned off the Holy of Holies, the absolute inner sanctum where the presence of God dwelt on earth.
Right.
It was a terrifying boundary. Only the high priest could pass through it, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement under strict blood sacrifice protocols.
So nobody else could even look inside.
If anyone else went in, or if the priest messed up, the belief was that the holiness of God would strike them dead. It physically embodied the unbridgeable chasm between a perfectly holy God and a fractured, sinful humanity.
So to have that specific barrier violently ripped apart at the exact second Jesus dies, it's the ultimate visual aid.
Exactly.
The mechanism of separation is destroyed. The absolute exclusivity of God's presence is thrown wide open to everyone because the ultimate sacrifice has just been paid.
It signals that the temple system is effectively obsolete. Direct access is now granted. And immediately after this, Jesus commits his spirit to the Father and breathes his last.
Which brings us to the reaction of the Roman centurion.
Yes, this is crucial.
This guy is a commander of 100 hardened soldiers. He's the lead executioner. He has likely watched hundreds of men die screaming in agony, cursing Rome.
Oh, absolutely.
But he watches how Jesus dies and he declares, certainly this man was innocent, or righteous, depending on the translation. Why is his voice so critical here?
Because of his utter objectivity.
What do you mean?
Well, the religious leaders claimed Jesus was guilty of blasphemy. The political leaders claimed he was guilty of treason. But Luke ensures the final word on Jesus' life comes from a pagan, Gentile military officer.
Wow.
The man whose literal job was to execute enemies of the Roman state looks at the cross and officially acquits him. It is the final, undeniable validation of the innocence that the corrupt legal system tried to bury.
That's powerful, but the reality is Jesus is dead. And in the Roman world, victims of crucifixion didn't get peaceful funerals, did they?
No, the entire point of crucifixion was maximum lasting humiliation.
Yeah, right. The bodies were usually left on the wood for scavenging birds, or at best, dumped unceremoniously into shallow, unmarked mass graves reserved for criminals.
Exactly.
Which raises a massive logistical question. How does a state enemy convicted of high treason end up with a highly respectful, secure individual burial?
And this is where we are introduced to Joseph of Arimathea.
Right.
The text is very precise about his identity. He's a good and righteous man, but crucially, he is a member of the Sanhedrin.
The same council.
He sits on the very council that just railroaded Jesus through a show trial.
But he secretly dissented, and the political risk he takes here is astronomical.
Unbelievable risk.
He steps out of the shadows, goes directly to the Roman governor, Pilate, and formally requests the body. By doing that, he is essentially outing himself to the Roman Empire as a sympathizer of an executed insurrectionist.
So while simultaneously betraying his own religious colleagues, the sociology of that moment cannot be overstated. He risks his wealth, his status, and potentially his life. And he has to work incredibly fast.
Why is that?
It is Friday afternoon, the day of preparation. In a matter of hours, the sun will set, the Sabbath will begin, and Jewish law forbids any work, including touching a dead body or sealing a tomb.
So Joseph takes the body down, wraps it in linen, and places it in his own brand new rock-hewn tomb, a virgin tomb where no one had ever been laid.
Yes.
Now, stepping back from the sheer adrenaline of this Friday evening timeline, we have to look at the master key here.
The blueprint.
Right. When you lay all these events out, the trial, the silence, the method of death, the casting of lots, and finally this burial, it feels like chaotic history. But it's not random at all, is it?
Not a single detail is random. When you synthesize the events of Luke 23 with the ancient Hebrew scriptures, it is staggering.
It really is.
I mean, we saw Jesus remain silent before Herod, fulfilling the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. We saw the soldiers gamble for his clothes, directly acting out the anguish of Psalm 22.
And Joseph of Arimathea is the final puzzle piece.
Precisely. Isaiah 53, verse 9, stated explicitly that the suffering servant would be assigned a grave with the wicked, but would be with a rich man in his death.
Wow.
By sacrificing his own expensive, custom-carved tomb for a humiliated state criminal, Joseph of Arimathea, probably without even realizing it in the panic of the moment, closes the loop on a prophecy written 7 centuries earlier.
That's incredible.
The narrative forces you to realize that above the chaos, above Pilate's cowardice and the Sanhedrin's manipulation, a sovereign architectural design is being flawlessly executed.
So what does this all mean for you? We've explored the gritty political history, the astronomical anomalies, and the breathtaking prophetic blueprints. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over regarding the very nature of grace.
It's a great thought.
Think back to that criminal hanging next to Jesus. As humans, we constantly overcomplicate what it takes to be accepted, always trying to balance the scales with our own good deeds or frantic apologies.
We do. We always try to earn it.
But look at the mechanics of that man's salvation. He was nailed to a piece of wood. He had absolutely zero time left to turn his life around.
None.
He couldn't volunteer. He couldn't donate money. He couldn't climb down from that cross and make amends to the people he had violently wronged.
Right.
He brought absolutely nothing to the table except his own admitted guilt. Yet, based on a single desperate moment of faith, just asking to be remembered, he was granted immediate, unhindered access to paradise.
Just a beautiful reality.
What does that profound, radical reality say to you about how grace actually works?
It's completely scandalous, and it is entirely beautiful.
It really is. God blesses all of you listening.